Hi, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. I'm Joel McIntosh. I'm the publisher at Proofrock Press. And it just dawned on me after we've done a ton of these things that I never introduced myself, and I'm just some rando doing these things. And so I want to tell you who I am. I've been doing this for 30 years. I was a classroom teacher before then, and worked at Baylor University in the Center for Gifted Education there before launching Proofrock. I'm incredibly grateful that you guys are here. I know that this is the end of your school day, and having been a former classroom teacher, I know what a big commitment that is. This is usually the time to regroup and plan for the next day or do assessments, and you're giving up your time, and we sure do appreciate that. Let me tell you a little bit about the Zoom interface so that you kind of have a sense of how it's working. You can see us, but we cannot see you and we cannot hear you. There is a Q&A box down on the bottom of the screen. If you click that, you'll get a little box that you can enter questions into. We're doing this webinar a little differently than some of the others. If you've attended some of the others, there is no sort of PowerPoint to this or anything like that. This is a Q&A session with one of our authors, and I want you to be involved in that. So please click that Q&A box and ask any kind of questions you want to have. At the end of this session, and I'll mention this again at the end, I will post a recording of this webinar. So you'll have access to that. I'll email everybody that registered with a link to the webinar, so don't worry about that. The purpose of these webinars is to introduce some of the concepts of the books that we publish to our customers. But really the underlying is give you guys a chance to meet the authors that you've purchased books from, to after you've tried to implement some of the materials, to be able to ask the author questions, let them know about a little challenge that you hit and see if we can problem solve that. It's just this is an interactive opportunity for you as someone who's a fan of in this case, Laurie Westfall's work, whom I'll introduce in a moment. But it's just a time for us to get together. And so I hope you'll use that Q&A box, and we'll pose some questions to Laurie. Let me introduce Laurie Westfall. She is a fantastic author of 43 books for Proofrock Press. She has her doctorate in curriculum and instruction, and she is now the director of a gifted and talented program for a district here in Texas. She has lots of experience and lots to talk about today regarding menus. And so, you know, the focus of this presentation will be menus as a tool for differentiation in a classroom and delivering student choice in a classroom and student empowerment in that classroom. So maybe Laurie, now that I've introduced you, maybe you could talk a little bit about what a menu is and just give an overview of what the menu systems is.
Sure. And let me also start by saying about the Q&A box down at the bottom. If we have some folks who are listening who are already using menus and you hear some things or you want to make some comments as well, please do that. Just because Joel and I will talk, but I mean, we will talk all the time. But this is something really to make sure that you guys are involved in being able to, you know, interact with us as well. So please feel free to make comments and such in the Q&A box. So anyway, let me talk a little bit about menus. It's interesting. In fact, I always, when I start talking to teachers about menus, one of the things that I always say is you probably want to introduce to your parents what a menu is, because the word itself is associated with restaurants. So when we start talking to parents about using menus or children, sometimes their only experience with that term is going out to eat. And although there have been other vocabulary words or other ways to describe what a menu is, they're choice boards, they're ways that we offer opportunities for our children to be able to choose. We say choose the path to their learning. So at its most basic level, a menu is just a list of choices. And when I talk to teachers about menus, I give them samples, I have them look at it, and I say, give me a basic definition, and I can just predict what they will say when they've experienced it. It's just a list of choices. That being said, at the level that we're talking about for our students, there's another definition that I share, and it's actually that they're a very complex system. So they're a complex system that allow us to accomplish a lot of different things without necessarily having the children know what we're accomplishing. It's almost like I know that I have a really good menu. My students go through and they're like, yay, I get to do this. And they're like, oh, but I have to do that one. And that tells me that I probably have done a great job at designing it, because I found something that met their needs, but in order to complete the menu, they're being challenged in a way that they didn't necessarily appreciate. And that's not always a bad thing, because menus are all about choices. So depending on how they consume the menu, they will have different responses. But menus themselves are just a list of choices that are available.
And Lori, I tell you what, let me do that. I'll put you on the spot because I didn't do this the last time, but I wanted to give an example of what an actual menu looks like. I pulled this one between our previous webinar and this one. There's a little 30-minute break. I pulled this one out, mostly because I love mysteries, but this is from the Differentiating with Menus, the 3.5 edition. And it's a rubric, or sorry, it's a Tic Tac Toe menu, right? For as exploring mysteries. Can you talk a little bit about this particular one?
Sure. Well, and first of all, let me also bring up, by selecting the Tic Tac Toe menu, right? This is a format called it's Tic Tac Toe. The Tic Tac Toe menus are actually one of the most popular menus out there. They were first brought up in Susan Weinbrenner's, they call it the Orange GT Bible, right? Reaching out to gifted children in the regular education classroom. And she did some work with Tic Tac Toe menus, and after that work, they became very popular. That being said, you're going to find in my book and anybody that I've trained on designing menus, that when we design Tic Tac Toe menus, we kind of have a different perspective. So the goal in the one that you're looking at here, the children, if you look, it does say that they need to form a Tic Tac Toe, but it needs to be across or down only. And sometimes when I look, and this is actually a really easy way to look at some menus that you might find online, by having the rule of across or down only, it actually, remember I said it's a complex system. The Tic Tac Toe menus take the longest to design because of this kind of rule that we're looking at. But I'll tell you, if you look at the one that's on the screen you're mentioning for mysteries, if you look across or down and you look at the topics at the top of each square, so if we look across the top row, you'll see element of mysteries, promoting your mysteries, and my mystery. And then if you look down any column, you're going to see those same 3 topics. So this Tic Tac Toe is arranged in such a way that when the children go across or down, they're getting one of each topic. The other arrangements that are actually here as well, once we start digging into them a little bit more, when you go across or down, you're going to see different learning modalities. So let's look at the top row again. You'll notice that under elements of mysteries, they're making a mind map. That's kind of a written activity. Promoting your mystery, their you be the person presentation, that's them coming in and kind of acting something out tactilely and speaking verbally. And then under my mystery, they have a board game. So when children go across or down, they're also getting different learning modalities that are incorporated. So the Tic Tac Toe menu you're looking at, although the children look at it and say, oh, that's easy, I'm just going to go across or down. When they start really getting into it, as I mentioned, they get into the ooh and then oh situation, because there might be one there that's going to be a challenge for them. It might be the modality, it might be the content, it may also be Bloom's levels, because those are incorporated here too. There's a low level, a middle level, and a higher level that the children get by going across and down each way. But you didn't look at that much in depth when you first thought you were picking it.
Yeah, and that makes sense too, because, well, particularly with this tic-tac-toe model, you as the teacher are making deliberate decisions about the mix of things that a kid can do, and a kid who, might typically not push themselves, isn't allowed to like pick the easiest ones or something like that. You've got some empowerment for the teachers and well on the decision making. Yeah, that's right. Can you talk about what are some of the different kinds of formats that you might employ when you're doing menus?
Well, and in general, I'm going to use a literary term, but when it comes to menus, there are really 2 genres, hence the literary term. There's what I call target-based menus. That's my own term. You won't find that research in any of those types of things. Target-based. And then we have point-based. So in a target-based menu, there's no points on the menu, but there's a target to be reached. So the tic-tac-toe that you just looked at, that you just showed us, that's a target-based menu, across or down. Another target-based menu could be a 3-shape menu. Excuse me. Where it might have 3 circles, 3 squares, 3 diamonds. they pick one of each shape. So again, it's not about points, it's about one of each shape. We have a meal menu, breakfast, lunch, dinner, dessert. They pick one from each meal. So you can do a pick 3 menu. There's a whole bunch of different options and they just pick 3. Those are all what I consider target-based. There's a target for the children to reach. There's also point-based menus. Those menus have points assigned to each of the different tasks based on Bloom's levels. So the more complex have a higher number of points. And then there's a point goal. So the menu, if we have, say, a 2-5-8 menu, then we have some 2-pointers, 5-pointers, and 8s. The goal on those is usually 10 points. I have, by the way, a junior high school version of that. That's a 20, 50, 80. So we add to 100. I have, you can have a list menu with a whole bunch of different points. One of my favorite menus is the game show menu. It actually looks like a Jeopardy board. So you have, you know, and then you have all of these columns, and then you have point values that go down. Those are bigger menus, and the point goal on that may actually be like 250 points because there's so many different activities for them to select from. So as far as formats, target-based menus, no points, point-based menus. One of the other big differences about these, or for these two, in a target-based menu, if we have, I mean, I know we have some teachers in the audience here, and one of the big things we always look at is how would we take a grade on these? On, say, the Tic Tac Toe that you just showed us, that would actually be 3 grades in the grade book. So there would be whatever those titles were. There was like My Mystery, and or you know how we read the 3 titles? In the grade book, those would be the titles in the grade book, and then they'd have a grade for each. If we were doing the meal menu, there'd be a breakfast grade, a lunch grade, and a dinner grade. So grade-wise, target-based menus create multiple grades in the grade book. Point-based menus, on the other hand, create 1 grade. Because if they do a 20-point product and an 80-point product, that's 100 points. So in a point-based menu, it's all about getting to the goal. And I will tell you, of the 2 different types, a lot of folks will ask me about modifications, or we start talking about choices and those types of things. Target-based menus tend not to be very forgiving for poor choices. I mean, let's say a child did the Tic Tac Toe menu, the mystery menu that you were showing, and let's say they made a poor choice and submitted a product that was not up to expectations and earned a 40%. They have a 40% now in their grade book because that was the grade. On a point-based menu, we have some flexibility. Let's say a child selects an 80-point product. That's really super high, but we have a menu for that. So let's say they selected 80-point product, they make a poor choice, and they earn 10. So that's 10 out of 80, significantly lower. But here's the thing, that doesn't get recorded in the grade book. If they earn 10 points, they need 90 more. So they're allowed to go back to the menu, select something else, so that they can build to the 100 points. So when you look at the different formats, it makes a big difference, you know, what your goal is.
Yeah, that does make sense. And when we're thinking about the nature of the activities the kids are doing, let me go back and show. Let me go back to that that PDF so I can show folks what you know, the kind of things that kids will do. So every one of the items that a kid could choose within the menu system would. This is back, you know, sort of basics of gifted. You know that they're choosing. Product, content, and process. And so each one of these, and you're going to throw in a third as well. So we're going to choose a product, and in your book, different books have different product examples. This is just what was appropriate for the language arts grade 3 through 5. These are the kind of products that kids that you would choose from as you're designing your menus. And then, you know, you go into some really good detail about sort of what each of these products might sort of the criteria for what they're going to look like. What is this product that you've just described? And then you talked in the books about choosing, you know, critical and creative thinking and how those go into each one of these items. And then, and of course, the content is determined by what's being taught in the classroom. And then you've got this third piece about learning style preference. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that comes into play?
Sure. Let me let me first of all talk about, I want to do a little bit of background and then I'll get in there. When we look at our menus in general, like our Tic Tac Toes, right? I said that there were three things that I call them the, oh, no, I can't remember. The important three. I had an alliteration for it. Now I've lost it in my head. But anyway, it's the different levels of blooms, it's the content, and then it's the learning modalities. And I know that different researchers, if you talk to folks in the educational field, especially GT, some of them do not put credence with learning styles or learning styles, that particular term. And that's fine if you don't necessarily believe in the true aspects of learning styles. However, I would challenge anyone to work with any of our students, but especially secondary. And the difference between offering them an opportunity to do, say, a play or a skit or a video or something with technology, what you will see when you offer the students opportunities in different learning modalities or different learning preferences, it's almost like the best way that I can describe it, and as teachers, I can give you a specific example that goes with it, but it's something where when we ask our children who might prefer to do something else, when we ask them to do something visual or written, some of our students might look at it and say, okay, I'm going to give the teacher what they want. Because to them, that's how they're looking at it. It's simply a compliance issue. So they're saying, okay, let me figure out exactly what they want and give it to them. But when they're offered the opportunity to choose from some other modalities that are not common to the classroom. So again, commercial, skit, video, just some different things that are not necessarily part of a standard classroom setup. What I have found is rather than the children saying, I'm going to give you what you want, they say, let me do what I want and share it with you. So when it comes to the modalities, I know there's quizzes and inventories and all those types of things. I will tell you there are children who prefer verbal opportunities, but sometimes they still want to write something. Sometimes they still want to draw something. So we don't want to pigeonhole them into something, a certain style or preference, but we want to offer them the opportunity for them to select those different things. So you'll find on the menus that I've designed is that all of those are directly incorporated. So there's always something that's like a menu, right? That you go to a restaurant. Hopefully you will always find something you like on there. That's the same way with our educational menus. And what's interesting, and I don't know that I answered your question yet, but what was interesting about integrating those different learning styles, many of our students, especially our GT students, they might come into a content saying, I don't like this topic. I don't like this piece. And that's fine. They don't necessarily have to like all of that. But what I found is when I offer a menu, they like the product. So they really want to do a video. And they're like, yay, video. And then like, okay, now it has to be on chemical reactions. Okay, well, that's fine, but video. So if I can get them excited about the product, the content comes along for the ride. So there's a lot of different reasons behind the learning modalities, but my students, as soon as I offered them the opportunity to do something other than written visual, they got really excited about the content, about what we were doing. It changed their view of what I was trying to cover. And they tended to go to a deeper level because it was theirs, it was for them, not for me. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, I was interested in your thoughts on that. I think, you know, as someone who has dyslexia and or in early school really struggled with reading and really all the way through school and became an English teacher. So, you know, but what you learn to do if you have those challenges is you develop coping skills, and having a teacher that offers a lot of different ways of learning a thing for kids who are 2E is really important. So it has bigger benefits than just you know, addressing the learning styles question, but it's also a way of helping kids who, you know, are struggling and need some ways to cope with what they're struggling with. I wanted to, because you introduced an idea here and we talked about it in the last webinar. I thought it was so important. You know, and I'm reiterating something that I talked about last time. So Lori, you know, sorry, you put up with me for a sec. We went through so many years where it was just schools were a lot of drill and kill, and we were, you know, doing just preparing for standardized tests, and there is still so much of that, but I do feel like the pendulum has started to swing back a bit, and we're starting to look at, well, what are some other things, what got lost in all of that. And one of it was the student empowerment piece, the student choice piece, and the benefits that go along with that, allowing kids to become more autonomous with the learning that they're doing. Can you talk a little bit why menus are a vehicle for that, and why it's a sort of an open door into that kind of thinking?
Uh, Sorry, all of a sudden my brain just went boom. It sometimes happens. When we start looking at choice, autonomy, and I think I had mentioned before, I know you mentioned my doctorate as well. My doctoral thesis was on choice and menus. So I did a whole lot of research on the impact that choice has, and the piece is how choice affects so many different things. And it's almost a triad. So choice affects motivation, and motivation affects achievement. So the three together, I mean, if we're looking, I mean, if I look at what I want for my students, obviously I want achievement. I want them to be able to understand the information, retain the information, etc. But to do that, they need to be motivated. Choice helps all of those types of things take place. And I think actually, even if we ask the audience to put in the Q&A, and by the way, if you're still tuned in with us and listening to what we're saying, you certainly could put a response to this. But one of the questions I often ask my audience is, you know, why do our students need choice? And they come up with some very standard responses. You know, it helps with motivation, it helps with buy-in, it helps, sorry, my dog, it helps with all these different things, which is true. But I like to challenge the norm just a little bit about, and this was a shower idea. If you're a teacher, you're going to be able to relate to this, right? It was in the morning before school, and I'm in the shower, you know, when you figure out you're going to change all your plans right away. And if there's no line at the copy machine, you can get it done. So this was a shower idea. But I realized that making good choices is a skill. And because I was wondering, how is it, I will say, you know, I feel I'm a pretty good decision maker. I can, you know, whatever comes up, I have a strategy for that. But the reason I came up with it was I was seeing a lot of my students who were struggling with making decisions, and more so now than used to be. And when it comes to our children struggling with making decisions, I was thinking, how is this even possible? Like, I mean, it was not part of my reality. And I came to the conclusion, and I've asked plenty of people, and we can ask our audience as well. If we can accept that making good choices is a skill, then what are the implications of that, accepting that philosophy? And when I talk to teachers, they'll say, oh, well, that's easy. I mean, we know what to do with skills, right? Well, we teach skills. But you wouldn't expect a kindergartner to be able to write a paragraph, even a GT, right? It's just not developmentally appropriate. Choice is the same way. And as I started researching, as I started looking at some other things, I found that if children or people, in fact, everybody in the audience can think about this at the moment. If we think back as adults and we think about like our version of decision making, like everybody think about, are you a good, or do you feel you're an effective decision maker? I do this in my sessions, and I have people talk about it and them discuss, and it becomes very personal for them. But if you can say yes or no, I bet, because I haven't run anybody yet that this doesn't work for, if you can say yes and you think about it, you can give me specific examples through your life where someone coached you with that. You were given the opportunity to make a choice. You were given the opportunity to make a poor choice and come back from that. So you were offered, it really was. You ran through the learning cycle of, this is a choice. Here's two, make them. It was a bad choice. What made it a bad choice? How would we change it? If you don't feel you're an effective decision maker, you probably can't narrow that down. In fact, I've had people in my sessions, it's great, they'll come up and talk to me. I usually do it right around break. They will come up and talk to me and they'll say, you know what? I was not an effective decision maker, and then this happened. And I had to go through this, and now I'm good. That was a learning experience. And when we look at what's happening in the world today, and I shared this story before, but for me, I'm from a real small town in northern Michigan. And, you know, we had the golden whistle, and my mom would say, go out and play and come back when I blow the whistle. So for my life, I made choices on a daily basis. And I learned a lot by making those choices. I have no problem making choices now. But when we look at the world that our children are living in now, you can't just say, go out and play. It's not necessarily as safe for them. So our children are not necessarily getting the choices, or if there are choices, they're being made for them. In the district where I am, there are situations where even, I met with a parent just yesterday, for their junior, their student who's a junior, they're going to be a senior, they're already telling their child what they're taking next year. So they're actually, the parents are saying, here's what you have to do. And I'm like, what if the child wants to experience something? Not a choice. So if you look at the situations that a lot of our children are in right now, it's a missed opportunity to develop what we take for granted. And this is an opportunity when we do menus to integrate choice into the curriculum. And my goal, like if you gave me my choice of things to do, I would love to see a K through 12 integrated choice curriculum, because it's something that children just need to be exposed to.
I've got a couple of questions, and so let me shift over to the audience. Could you talk about the implementation of a choice menu within a chapter? In other words, would you use the menu at the beginning or the middle, the end of the unit? Where does the menu come into play in terms of a unit of instruction?
I have a perfect answer for that. I'm glad somebody asked that question.
It's always good to have an answer.
Yay! And this is going to be very unusual, but I love talking about it. Menus should always be given on the first day of instruction before any instruction has taken place. And I know that this seems counterproductive, because usually what we want to do, right, well, the perception is we want our children to know something about it so that when they get the menu, they're good to go. So they already know something. But that's kind of backwards. So imagine this, like you mentioned, having the chapter or wherever we're working. If you give the menu on the very first day of the unit, the children all come in, you're doing your intro on the first day anyway, right? You got to build background knowledge, do all those types of things. They get the menu on the very first day, the very first 10, 15 minutes, right? You're going to go over, talk about them all, build interest. What's going to happen is the children are going to get excited. Remember I said they get excited about the products. That's what excites them. The content goes along. So they get really excited. They're like, woo, video, or whatever it might be. Now, what's going to happen, and if you're in secondary, this will happen to me every single year. There's going to be about 1 or 2 children who might actually say, okay, so I want to do this, but I don't know the information. Now you have your students in the perfect situation. Because when you start doing background knowledge, when you start talking about the vocabulary, they have something to tie it to. So in their mind, like if I'm getting ready to do key vocabulary, I will tell them, we have 10 key words. They're all going to be used in your products. Now they're thinking, I have to understand this so that I can do this foldable, or I can do this PowerPoint. So they are processing the information from that perspective. It changes how the children go through the unit. A few, it's not even a big deal, but something to consider. If you give the menu at the very beginning of the unit and you do it this way, I always tell the children, I'm not going to grade a product until we've talked about it, because I don't want to have misconceptions. However, they will ask, can I start looking ahead? Can I start researching something? Can I start looking things up? Heck yeah, I'd love for them to do that anyway. But because of the menu, they have interest in something that for me, I'm covering next Tuesday. By the time I get to Tuesday, if you have a GT class, probably 100% will already have looked up information. So when you teach it, there's a huge amount of knowledge for you to draw on. If you have an on-level class or a cluster class, you can count on, even then, our on-level students like this too. At least 40 to 50% probably have already looked it up. So your instruction is going to go faster. You're going to find, you know, how you're always, really, I don't know how many times, if you think about, as teachers, if you think about your content, I would dare to guess you are often dragging your children through the content. Here we go. When you use a menu and you introduce it on the very first day of the unit, they drag you. What are we going to talk about this next week? And they get all upset. but they start looking things up. So you go through things faster. You can get to a deeper level and a more complex level much quicker. So always available.
That makes sense, Lori. Let me hijack things a little bit here because I want to show folks where they can go to get the Differentiating with Menus books. I mentioned that there were 43 of them on the Proofrock website. So if you just go to proofrock.com, search for Differentiating Menus or Lori's last name, you'll find all of the books that she has written. She has done books for 3-5. She's done middle school books, each in the core content areas. We also have some for inclusive classrooms, so that you've got some exemplars of menus designed to be more helpful with struggling learners. We've got books in the disciplines on the secondary level, biology, physics. There's just a lot there for you to look through. I will follow up this webinar with a couple things. One is I'll send you just an example of a menu so you can kind of have a hard copy and see what we're talking about. 2, I will send you a link to this recording. And 3, I'll send you a discount code that'll allow you to dip your foot in and get a really good discount. I'll beat the Amazon prices with that discount, and hopefully keep you over here at the Proofrock website. So thank you everyone for participating. Lori, I know you took off time from work today to be with us, and I sure appreciate that. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email us, and we'll be happy to help. Okay, bye. Thank you.